What's up, guys? My name's Captain Stillwater, and welcome to SPL in Review Day 3. We only had one game today on Saturday, I believe the 26th. I am recording this on the 28th, however, because I was busy. So, because of that, boom! Match set statistics are here. I'm assuming it's because I waited the extra 2 days. I don't really know. But we were only given one showing today between Panthera and the Leftovers, both teams of which are 2-0 so far in the SPL after the previous days. So let's just scroll down here. As you can see, the Leftovers, we had Badge on Sobek, Cheerio on Raijin, Jungler on Odin, Nika on Ravin, and Arkle on Onher. For Panthera, we had Emily2 on Apollo, Ireffer on Kepri, Yaman on Isis, Dimmy on Bellona, and Adapting on Thor. So for Game 1, like, the first 5 minutes of this game were just Panthera pushing every single lane for the Leftovers so hard that the Leftovers would literally undertower in every single lane, to the point where Adapting actually had 0 player damage for, I don't remember how far into the game, but it was a significant amount of time, simply because he couldn't actually get to anyone. He couldn't poke, he couldn't gank, everyone was tower tanking, so there's not really much for him to do except farm. If we look at Panthera's team overall, Thor, Bellona, Isis, Kepri, Apollo, it's a strong comp. You have Yaman, Isis, and Adapting's Thor giving massive early game pressure. You have Kepri, who's just usually first ban. So he got through, and he was picked, obviously, because why wouldn't you pick Kepri? He's just OP. He's just OP. Dimmy's Bellona. Dimmy, one of my favorite players to watch. Showing up real strong, going 3-1-11. And Emily2's Apollo, who we'll get to, played very well, 7-1-7. For the Leftovers, their comp, you have Ravin, who has good pressure, arguably weaker team fight phase, and I think that was seen in his slash line, and mainly seen in his damage output of only not even reaching 9k at 8,700. Jungler's Odin. I really like Odin in the jungle. I like him in the jungle more than I like him support. Actually, I don't know. I guess that really depends on who your jungle and who your support are. If they work well with the Odin, then I guess it doesn't matter which position he's in. I guess I just enjoy watching Odin jungles, because Odin ganks are just bird bombs for like 80% of someone's health into like the cage. Cheerio's Raijin, who we'll get to, and you can just look right here. This is the highlight of Cheerio's Raijin. He played as well as I expected him to on Raijin. I think Raijin's still a pretty iffy god to be picking. I think there are better choices, but if played properly, his damage output is stupid. Just absolutely stupid. He did 28k. Like, that's ridiculous. And then Badge's Sobek. Yeah, I guess we'll just start there at the top, because I have notes on every individual player. So Badge Sobek, he played well. Like, he had some really smart plays. He showed a lot of intuition in team fights when, even though he was just being picked. He was just being focused out. Team fights, especially at the start or like earlier in the game, they were just focusing out Badge. They could just pick him off easy, because Sobek's escape and initiation are the same thing. His pluck and his dash are one skill. So, albeit he went 1-6-2, 5k damage, miserably low GPM, and he was the only non-level 20 in the entire game. I think overall he played well. He went early High to the Urchin into Mid Guardian, so he didn't have magic protections, but when you look over, the only person doing really any magic damage is Yaman's Isis, which we'll get to as being countered by Jungler's Odin. Bulwark of Hope here, you know, just a standard magic defense item, especially because the passive, even though having been adjusted multiple times now, I believe it's twice, Still really strong item. Going into... That's not Cloak of Concentration. That's the preemptive Magi's Blessing. I don't know what it's called. I apologize for not knowing what it's called, but yeah, he was apparently going into Magi's Blessing, probably to just deal with, you got the Thor double stun. Whoops. You got Thor's double stun, you got Bellona's stun ult, you got the Isis stun, you got the Khepri silence and root, and then you got the Apollo Mez and pop-up, so a lot of CC coming out on Panthera. Jumping down to Cherio's Raijin. Cheerio, like I said before, super high damage. He had some pretty good offensive mezzes, but the problem is that, in my opinion, Khepri really counters Cherio's escape early because there's that delay when you attempt to Thunder Crash away, and that's plenty of time for Khepri to grab you, and that will silence you. And then, like I said, with the number of stuns coming out on this team, it's essentially impossible to get away. But he did 28k damage, super high damage late game. I think in a better team comp, with more lockdown, mainly because your jungle didn't have any CC outside of, Odin has his slow in the cage, but like you need some more like stun CC, things that lock people down, keep them off of you. The cage works, but it's not the best. Nika had a hard time, so the roots weren't the best. On her's Impale's just hard to hit. So I would like to see a team comp with more peel for Raijin if we're gonna see Raijin being played. This team has a lot of like the duo lane, a lot of aggression on her Sobek, so they're looking to kill, but they were just pushed under tower the whole time. Raijin and Odin, not the best super early, but mid to late they have Odin is good early in that he has high damage output, but Raijin's clear is pretty bad early. So like his damage comes online later in the game, his damage a little bit more early in the game, and then like at the end he's kind of more just like for ults. So they didn't sync up the best, so maybe that was the issue. I don't really know. Speaking of the Odin junglers, Odin, in my opinion, minimal impact. He did not have as much impact in this game as he should have. We've been seeing Odin essentially be a two-sided coin, and he's either really, really strong or not doing anything. And I kind of think that's how Odin works. You either get a couple kills, get ahead, and you just start tearing through people because the Odin ring's stupid strong early, and you have a really good team comp to follow up on the Odin ring, or your Odin's ring is just kind of slinking more and more into a defensive ring and then just becoming ineffective. Jumping down to Nika's Raven, I did say this. No, it was just an underperformance. He got outpushed early by Dimmy's Bellona, and he just didn't have an impact in the game. Raven has not as easy a time as disrupting people. His ultimate single target, mainly used to escape, not really putting the pressure on the back line as he needed to. Decent sustain just because he's Raven, but I don't know. After the nerf to Raven, he's not as good anymore, and considering there are a poop ton of solo laners with much better teamfight ults like Guan Yu, Bellona, even Tyr's ults, much better teamfight oriented. Odin, if you're putting Odin in the solo, but that's not as common a thing anymore. They're just better teamfight ults. Do I think this was a bad pick? No, I think it was just an underperformance coming out on Nika. But, that's that. Arkel's on her. This is kind of like a big point of attention in this game. Arkel, albeit going 1-5-2, which isn't that good. GPM in the 300s, which isn't that good. But I mean, look at his team. He did just shy of 20k damage. Honestly, though, he played well. He was not afraid to take fights. His build, boots into Iqval, into Chins, he was chunking kids early. He was not afraid to fight. He had some really good plays, and he was just really strong. He didn't have lifesteal until Aussie being 4th item. So there was a little question about, how much sustain is he going to have in the team fights? But, when he was getting ganked, essentially he had zero chance of surviving the ganks, so he would just try to put on damage, and he really would. He put out a lot of damage. The problem was, outside of him and Cherio putting out a lot of damage, there really was no other damage on the team. There wasn't any finish. If you look at Panthera, even Iraffer's Khepri essentially did more damage than Badja Jungler and Nika. I mean, Nika beat him by what, 147? Like, it's like one skill. So, very lackluster performance. I did say Badja played well. He played smart. I don't know if he played well, but lacking the damage. But overall, in game one, the leftovers took the first Gold Fury, which was looking up for them, and they had there was a brief moment in like this transition from mid to late where the leftovers looked really strong, and they looked like they could easily turn the game around. The game was definitely not solidified in Panthera's favor, even though they got pooped on in this game, and I use that very lightly. They looked good. They look like a team who has the potential to just blow up at any point and become a super dominant team in the SPL. Jumping over to Panthera for game one still, Emily 2, he played zone late game, while Dimmy was, like, they would switch. Dimmy and Emily 2 would, like, switch, where Dimmy was doing a lot of damage, and Emily 2 would, like, zone. It happened especially on the right side. If you look at his build, he ran Masamune, second item, to give himself that power spike and to give himself more movement speed, which really helped him, especially against Arkel's on her, who had so much damage early. I don't think Emily 2's Apollo could have outboxed him. So the extra movement speed really just helps you dip in and out of fights that you don't want to be in. He went Crusher last item, so really focusing on just pushing down the towers while his team took the fights. He wasn't as damage oriented as you might think, even though he did the most damage on his team, just shy of 24k. He was 7-1-7. During objective fights, he was generally focused on the objective. He was the objective killer, which makes sense looking at their team. But even with that said, he did, like I said, 24k damage. He went 7-1-7. He was big. He was huge. He played really well. Jumping down to Iraffer, I only have one note, and it's just smart plays. Iraffer coming out showing that he knows how to play Khepri, and he knows how to take team fights really well as a god who doesn't really have damage to try and force anyone out. Like, you have to CC. Like, that's your job. You just have to root and pluck and use that ult well, and you just have to rely on your team to really finish the kills. And if you look at the damage charts, like, his team did a lot of damage, so he played well. Yaman's Isis, just good play all around. I wasn't super, like, blown away or, like, I didn't think it was an underperformance. I didn't think it was like the best Isis performance I've ever seen, but it was just good. It was a good Isis. It was as well as I expect the SPL players to play Isis. I mean, the leftovers had an Odin, so Odin attempted to ring. I think they were focusing more on ringing Iraffer's Khepri, and they did this early, but they couldn't burst him down because they just didn't have enough damage unless Arkel was there, and even when he was, there wasn't always enough damage. Occasionally ringed Isis, but the Isis ult really was a good counter to the Odin ring, obviously. The heal almost never went off in terms of actually getting the heal off to save people, but the damage reduction, super big. He played well. Jumping down to my boy Dimmy here. He outplayed Nika in the lane, which wasn't too surprising. He just outlaned him, and then he just had good play. He had good disruption, good damage. He was always in these fights, really helping out. I don't really know what else to say. He just played really well. He ran Boots, Frostbound Iqbal for damage. Defense, Breastplate of Valor, Bulwark of Hope, Mantle of Discord. He just played well all around. Like I said earlier, him and Emily 2 kind of switched off there at one point, where Emily 2 like mezzed out a bunch of people in the back line and then popped them up in the back line, waiting for the rest of his team to take down Jungler and Badja? Or Nika and Badja? I don't remember. Two of the tankier gods while pushing tier 2 on right in the solo lane. So, good communication coming out on this team. And then Adapting's Thor. Adapting's known for his Thor. He had great plays. A couple of missed ults, but mainly just because he was going for dunks on people who were just getting their cooldowns offline and were able to jump out. But all around good play, even though he had a slow start there, considering his team had a very strong start. So all in all, Panthera still looking strong. Game 1, they looked really, really good. But the leftovers had signs of life. They went 2-0 over Hungry for More. And honestly, if they kind of... I don't really know what they need to do to step up. Personally, I think it's jungle pressure would really help them if they had a little bit better jungle pressure, and then Nika really just comes online in that solo lane. Because I think Nika's having a hard time in the solo lane right now, but it is, very early in the season, still week 1. So as Nika improves here, it gets more comfortable with laning against these people like Dimmy, who are super strong in the solo. I think the leftovers are going to definitely improve. Jumping over to game 2, Badja was still on Sobek. Cherio was on Scylla. Jungler was on Hoon Bats. Nika was on Guan Yu, and Arkle was on Neath. Emilitu on Hu Yi. Iraffer on his signature Ares. Yaman on Giannis. Dimmy on Tyr, and Adapting on Naja. Game 2. With the 0-minute mark, Nika and Jungler ganked Dimmy and killed him before he had stance switch. So just take note of that, considering this number right here and the fact that it's higher than everyone else. So they attempted to force Dimmy down, but it just didn't work. So we'll just start down with Panthera this time. Emilitu, Hu Yi, big damage late game, some really good ults. He was 9-0-5, never died, 9 kills. Got credit for 4 towers. Standard build. Big boy late game. He was doing a lot of damage. His ults were rocking fights. I don't think the Hu Yi ult gets as much credit as it needs to sometimes, and especially coordinating with Naja when Adapting would take people up into the air that were not going to be guaranteed kills. Emilitu would drop his ult on the landing spot, and there's that pop-up stun thing that happens a little bit at the end of the Naja ult that locks them into the Hu Yi ult for at least 1 to 2 stuns to land. Always guaranteed the kill. Iraffer's Ares, despite going 0-5, he was targeted out by the leftovers. He was the focus, but he still played well. He hit most of his chains, not all of his chains, but can you really expect an Ares to hit all of their chains for an entire game? Probably not. But he was focused out real hard, but still played really well, setting up for his team, taking all the damage, and really allowing his team to thrive in that essence. Yaman's Giannis, more oriented around portaling his team in and out than damage. As you can see, his damage only 16k. He still beat Cherio's Scylla, but you might expect him to be portal dropping people and shotgunning them. He focused almost entirely on shotgunning people and then just portaling his team through walls in and out, really helping. There's one signature gank where Giannis portaled Naja through into the duo lane, and Adapting just came in and wrecked shop, and I believe Emilitu got credit for the kill. Where were we? We're on Yaman. We're on Dimmy now. Dimmy, Tyr. As Tyr does, good disruption, really strong, does way too much damage, and doesn't die. As you can see, he went Boots and Titan's Bane for his main damage items. He went Void Shield for the hybridization. He went Breastplate of Valor, Bulwark of Hope, and Mantle of Discord. So this man was very tanky, and with the Tyr lifesteal built into his kit, his sustain is ridiculous. And yet he still did more damage than everybody. That's... I want to see Tyr picked more. I think he's just that much better than a lot of the solo lane picks that are being preferentiated so far in the SPL. I think Tyr is just too dominant. Jumping down to Adapting's Naja. This was... I think this god choice was really what set this team off, in that adapting, especially late game, once he got his full build up, he would just sash in. Like late game, they were just looking for picks. Like essentially the whole game, they were looking for picks. You have areas, so you're just looking for to hit the chain on someone who, you know, then can't get away because they can't dash, they can't use their escapes, and then just burst them with Giannis, Emily2, adapting, Demi, whoever's there. But with adapting's Naja being so scary that he could just run in and he'd, you know, throw the ring out, it would hit a bunch of people, they'd all be slowed, he'd gain movement speed, and then he'd sash somebody, and they'd have to beads. Like, they'd straight up have to beads, or they'd have to, like, ult out if they had the ult out. Like Scylla, Cherio had to ult out occasionally when adapting would just sash in on him. And what would happen was adapting would just sash in and then turn around and leave. And juke, and then wait for their beads to fade or their ult to fade. And then he'd go back in on them, and then he'd sash them again, or he'd ult them outright. Like, he burned so many ults and so many beads, and in coordination with Iraffer's Ares, every time he ulted, people had to beads or ult, that when Giannis went to portal drop, when Emily2 went to stun, when Demi went to pull, they couldn't stop that CC. They were forced to beads or ult out of Iraffer's Ares and adapting's Naja, and that really pushed the envelope for Panthera, especially with this team that wasn't necessarily teamfight oriented in like the 5v5 essence. They were more or less looking for quick picks on single targets to then put them in a numbers advantage and then take team fights. So for the leftovers, they were very close to winning the team fights all the time. Panthera would escape out of team fights, you know, with the kill advantage for the most part, but they'd be leaving with less than half health, or everybody in the yellow one time, or they had 3 people in the red and 1 person perfectly fine. Like, the leftovers didn't just sit there and take it. The single target essence of this team allowed the leftovers to really put on a lot of damage with the Hoonbats, Fear No Evil, and the Guan Yu cavalry charge. I mean, and then you got Sobek's big ult, Scylla's big ult. Like, they have a lot of team fight ults in that, like, they're big AoEs, or you can hit multiple people with them. So they were losing the majority of the team fights, but they were barely losing the majority of the team fights, which is a big thing to dwell on, considering there was a level difference for the majority of the game. There was a huge damage difference. But the leftovers put up a good fight. Badges Sobek, where are we? Badges Sobek had some pretty decent plucks this game. Better plucks than the first game, I think. Once again, he was 0-5. He kind of got focused down a lot, which is what I'm seeing happen in the SPL for Sobek picks. Like, every time a team picks Sobek, the other team really just focuses on killing Sobek, considering if you focus down Sobek, who's trying to be aggressive, he can't really be aggressive, and then his peel, you have Tail Whip and Pluck, but you have to use them like defensively, which means you have to, like, for Pluck, you have to make sure you hit that with the proper direction. Tail Whip's temporary, and the ult, a lot of people can generally just fight through. Cherio Scylla, I think, wasn't that good. He went 0-6. He hit ults early in the game, but Scylla didn't have enough damage early in the game, so he didn't really kill anybody. I don't believe he reset his ult at all this game. And then late game, he was just... The leftovers were on the back heel, and it seemed like he was using his ult to try and make something happen in situations where it wasn't entirely necessary. So he did miss a good number of ults. And all in all, I don't think it was a much worse performance in my eyes than the Raijin performance. I just think he didn't have the best game on Scylla. I'm sure he can play Scylla pretty well, but at the same time, there wasn't enough lockdown. Really, you have what? The Fear No Evil, which we'll get to in a second. Guan Yu stun ult, Neath stun ult, Sobek Pluck, if you're going to time it with the Pluck, so that right when they land, you hit them with I'm a Monster. Just like with Raijin, I think there needed to be more CC oriented around making sure that Scylla could get the damage off. I guess they were expecting these two ults to really set, and this ult mainly to set for all the team fights, but it didn't really happen like that. Jungler's Hoon Bats had good disruption, and as the game went on, his ults got better and better. But with that said, a lot of his ults were used to take down Ares, and I would have liked to see the ult dropped more on Emily2 and Yaman, in my eyes. But with that said, Nika's Guan Yu. Where are we? Nika's Guan Yu. Where are you, Nika? There you are. Got credit for first blood. Super high sustain, but that's, you know, Guan Yu for you. That's built in. But I just feel like apparently this comp right here, Guan Yu, Hoon Bat, Scylla, I believe is what the commentators were saying was something the leftovers pulled in relegations and worked really well for them. I can understand why. You have, you know, 3 really big ults and you have huge sustain coming out on Guan Yu. I don't think Nika played poorly. I think Nika played fine. The problem was that Nika was forced more into a defensive-oriented solo laner, trying to peel for his team and keep them sustained. And this brings me back to jungler putting the ult on Emily2 and Yaman would have helped more than putting it on the front line. Because if you're putting it on the front line and you also have Nika defending from the front line, then the only person putting pressure on the back line is Badja. And then you have jungler and Nika trying to peel for Cherio and Arkle. And when you look at this team, Adapting and Dimmy and Ares were all diving. Cherio and Arkle and Emily2 and Yaman were just kind of sitting in the back because the only person pressuring them was Sobek, and most of the time they just focused Sobek down real early. So I would have liked jungler to try and get to the back lines a little bit more. I think it would have helped the team out in the team fights. And then Arkle's Neath. I don't think it was as good of a pick as on her. I don't think he played as well as on her. His ults he tried to make some stuff happen. A lot of them he'd hit people in the red and they wouldn't die. They'd have just enough health to survive, which was kind of just, you know, like you can't really control that. But I don't think the pressure coming out from the Neath was as much as it needed to be, because like Neath late game not as strong as a lot of the other hunters. Doesn't put out the pressure that a lot of the other hunters put out. I guess you have Neath's Spirit Arrow for Scylla also. I always forget Neath has that. Because I always think of Neath using the Spirit Arrow to just set for herself or to like root somebody that's coming in on her and then backflip out. But with jungler focusing down the front line, occasionally getting some good ults on the back lines, Nika really being this defensive support, and then Badger getting focused out so hard, a lot of the pressure relied on Cherio hitting his skills, and I felt like he missed too many ults that game for it to be effective. So all in all, room to improve, but with everything I just said, don't forget, at the beginning I said, you know, the leftovers were barely losing most of these fights. Game 2 definitely could have gone either way for a long time. It wasn't really until like the 31st minute, that Panthera had a good push, was able to get Fire Giant, and then they just took all the towers, bid their time, took a fight, then took all the Phoenixes, and then that was game. So Panthera, Kabuya, as most people expected, went 2-0 over the leftovers, but the leftovers put out a good performance. Like I said before, a lot of eyes should be on the leftovers. They definitely have the potential to come online. So over the next few weeks, we'll have to see if they're able to climb that ladder, to really take that next step and become a top-level SPL team that really challenges the other teams in the league. Panthera looking strong, not as strong as the previous one, day 2, but looking strong all around. And yeah, there you guys have it. That was day 3 of the SPL. Oh God, wait. Oh hey, week 2. You guys can see it. Thank God there was no stats showing. I almost screwed that up. So week 2 on the 31st, which I believe is, I don't know when the 31st is. What day is that? That's Thursday. Duh, Jason. Thursday through Monday. Should know this by now. The Randozas versus Enemy. and then Denial versus Allegiance, and Soar versus Envy. So those are going to be some good games. Until then, I will see you all next time. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And once again, I will see you all next time.